patient come into my office last month, and she was in tears. She had finally taken the leap, started bioidentical hormones for perimenopause, estrogen, progesterone, the whole protocol. And within 3 weeks, she was having panic attacks for the first time in her life. Her prescriber told her to push through. It takes time to adjust, but that answer wasn't sitting right with her. And it didn't sit right with me either. So we ran her labs, and what we found was that her liver couldn't break down the estrogen fast enough. It was piling up in her system like rush hour traffic with no off-ramp. And here's the thing nobody is telling women about hormone therapy. The hormones aren't the problem. The problem is whether your body is actually ready to receive them. And if your gut is inflamed, your liver is sluggish, and your thyroid is underperforming, or your histamine is already through the roof, adding estrogen doesn't give you relief. It pours gasoline on the fire. I'm Dr. Deb, and this is Let's Talk Wellness Now. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on why hormone therapy backfires and what you need to address first before you ever fill that prescription. If you started HRT and felt worse, not better, this episode was made for you. Let's get into it.
What if your body wasn't betraying you? It was trying to get your attention. We've been trained to silence symptoms, numb them, shrink them, hide them. But symptoms are not enemies. They're messengers. They're the language of your biology saying, look deeper. Every woman I've treated who's been told to accept normal labs but still feels unwell, she's living proof that our system doesn't define health. Your body does. Seen It Last is about learning to translate your body's signals into truth and action, not just suppression.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Wellness Now, the show where we dig into the root causes of chronic illness, explore what's actually working in regenerative and functional medicine, and give you the real tools to heal. I'm Dr. Deb. If you or someone you love is navigating perimenopause, hormone therapy, or unexplained symptoms like fatigue, anxiety, brain fog, or weight gain that just doesn't budge, you're in the right place. So as usual, grab your cup of coffee, your tea, or whatever settles you in, get comfortable, and let's talk. So let's talk about metabolism. Why is estrogen not always just the magic bullet like people think? Let me start with something that is fundamental to everything we're going to talk about today, and something that conventional medicine almost completely ignores: estrogen. Estrogen doesn't show up in your bloodstream and just magically make you feel better. It has to be metabolized. Your liver has to break it down, package it, and send it out through bile and stool. And if any step in this process is blocked, and you're in perimenopause, it often is and doesn't allow you to get relief. You become estrogen dominant. Think of it as, imagine you're filling up a bathtub, but the drain is completely clogged. The water just keeps rising, and that's what's happening when you add estrogen to your body that can't clear it. You end up with more estrogen circulating than your system can handle, and you start seeing classic signs: breast tenderness, heavier periods, mood swings, weight gain around the hips, thighs, anxiety, and yes, even panic attacks. So although estrogen can help with anxiety and panic attacks, it can also cause the same problem if you're not processing the estrogen properly. So too little or too much estrogen can cause the same type of symptoms. And conventional medicine misses this because they're not testing. They're not testing how much estrogen you have, and they're not testing how you metabolize estrogen either. They may, if we're really lucky, they might check an estradiol level. And if it looks okay on paper, meaning it could be anywhere from 10 to 400, believe it or not, they're going to call it good. But estrogen isn't the starting line. Estradiol is what we're testing. What really matters is what your body does with that estrogen. And if you're producing productive metabolites like 2-hydroxyestrone or the problematic ones like 16-hydroxy and 4-hydroxyestrogen, these two drive inflammation and they can increase your cancer risk and your cardiovascular risk factors. In my practice at Serenity, we run testing that helps us determine how well you can clear these hormones before we prescribe estrogen. We can do a dry urine test for comprehensive hormones. We can do a blood test. We can do a salivary test. We can do a urine test. All of these tests, though, are really just a snapshot. They're just giving us a picture, a look, a window into what's going on in your body. And from there, you have to be able to understand exactly what each of these tests mean and how they're going to handle the estrogen inside of your body. And then you have to know the symptoms that you're looking for in case these tests don't tell you the exact thing that you're looking for. Sometimes on paper, you'll look great, but your body is going to tell us something completely different. And if it's telling us a different story, we need to understand what that story is that they're telling us. And we need to be able to manage those symptoms and adjust those hormones accordingly so that you can actually process them. And if you can't process them, that becomes a big problem. And this is why women feel worse on hormones than they feel better on hormones. So instead of guessing, we want to look at the data. We want to test, not guess. And we want to know exactly what's going on inside of your body. Now let's talk about the gut, because this is where estrogen metabolism can completely go sideways and most practitioners aren't even asking about it. Once your liver packages up estrogen for elimination, it sends it through bile into your small intestine where it's supposed to bind to fiber and leave your body through stool. Simple enough, right? But here's the problem. If your gut microbiome is out of balance, specifically if you have an overgrowth of bacteria that produces an enzyme called beta-glucuronidase, those bacteria can literally unwrap the packaged estrogen and send it right back into circulation. This is called enterohepatic recirculation. And it's one of the biggest, most overlooked reasons hormone therapy backfires. Now, let's also talk about if somebody doesn't have a gallbladder. What does that do to this estrogen metabolism? Well, remember, it secretes bile for production. Without a gallbladder, you have this drip, 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 this slow excretion of bile constantly dripping into the liver. And so that is also going to disrupt the way your body handles and processes estrogen. And so we need to take those kinds of things into consideration and make sure we're giving you appropriate enzymes that allow you to digest everything properly so that you can eliminate these excess estrogens that your body doesn't need. So using this analogy, picture a recycling facility that's supposed to break things down and then ship them out. But the workers keep pulling items off the truck and putting them back into the shelf. That's beta-glucuronidase. And it reactivates estrogen that was supposed to leave your body. And now you've got used estrogen recirculating, adding to the total load. Now let's add another layer to this. If you're supposed to remove this estrogen by stool and you're only having a bowel movement once a week or twice a week, what's happening to that excess estrogen? It's getting recirculated again. And so now you have another aspect of where this excess estrogen can actually be coming back into your body again. Conventional medicine doesn't test for any of this, and they don't look at your microbiome before prescribing hormones. They assume your digestion is fine because you're not complaining about bloating, but you could have silent dysbiosis, a microbiome imbalance that's quietly sabotaging your hormone clearance and you have no idea. Now, we don't test every single person with a stool test before we give them hormones. We certainly do if they start having problems afterwards. But if you do have some gut issues, it would really make sense for you to get a gut microbiome test done before you actually start hormone replacement therapy. And this is why it's so important to look at the GI system. We use a test called the GI map. We look at beta-glucuronidase. We look at sex hormone binding globulin. We look at inflammatory markers, signs that there's intestinal permeability. If the gut isn't ready, we're going to support the gut before we start giving hormone replacement therapy. You cannot simply bypass the gut and expect hormones to work. It doesn't matter how perfect your prescription is if your gut is undoing everything that it needs to do. Now, let me take you a little deeper into the liver, because this is where the biochemistry really matters. Your liver detoxifies estrogen in 2 phases. Phase 1 uses enzymes called cytochrome P450 to break estrogen down into metabolites. Phase 2 takes those metabolites and conjugates them. It attaches molecules like glutathione, sulfate, or glucuronic acid so that they can actually be excreted. And here's the problem. If phase 1 is running too fast and phase 2 is too slow, you create a bottleneck, a toxic intermediate pileup. And those intermediates are actually more inflammatory and more estrogenic than the original hormone. Think of this as an assembly line. Phase 1 is cutting the material. Phase 2 is packaging it for shipping. And if the cutting station is cranking out pieces faster than the packaging station can keep up, you end up with a whole pile of unfinished product all over the floor, right? If your body is doing the same thing, that's the reactive estrogen metabolites, the oxidative stress, the DNA damage, and all those side effects of hormones themselves. And here's what frustrates me about standard medicine. They check your liver enzymes, your AST, your ALT, to make sure your liver isn't inflamed. And then they stop there. Normal liver enzymes do not tell you whether your phase 2 detox pathways are functioning properly. You can have a perfectly normal liver panel and still be a terrible estrogen metabolizer. In my practice, we support both phases before starting hormone therapy. We use things like DIM, indole carbonyl 3, to support healthy estrogen metabolism through phase 1. We used NAC and glycine to support glutathione production in phase 2. We use methylated B vitamins to support methylation pathways, and we evaluate for genetic variants, specifically COMT and MTHFR, that affect how your body processes hormones. Dr. Karazian has written extensively on this. If you carry a slow COMT variant, you are genetically predisposed to struggling with estrogen clearance. And we need to know that when we're prescribing hormones. So sometimes there's questions that we can ask that lead us down that path that we know you're a slow COMT variant, but sometimes we will actually test that to make sure of that. So then you're not suffering for 3 or 4 months on hormones without anybody recognizing what's going on or setting you up for success. So we're going to take a break right now. We're going to hear from our sponsor, our telehealth partner for out-of-state patients. So if you're not in Wisconsin, but you want someone who thinks this way, who tests your estrogen metabolites and looks at your gut before handling your prescription, this is who I send my out-of-state patients to. You can go to ellemed.com/Dr. Deb Muth, and they will get you all set up with the right practitioners. All right, so let's talk about thyroid and histamine, the 2 systems that nobody checks consistently. We've already covered estrogen metabolism and the gut. And now I want to talk about the 2 other systems that will absolutely determine whether hormone therapy helps you or destroys you, your thyroid and your histamine response. So let's talk about thyroid first. Estrogen increases a protein called thyroid binding globulin, TBG. And TBG binds to the thyroid hormone and makes it inactive. So when you start estrogen therapy, even if your thyroid was functioning adequately before, you can suddenly become functionally hypothyroid, where your free T3 drops and you start experiencing fatigue, brain fog, cold intolerance, and weight gain. Your prescriber sees this and says, you're just adjusting to the hormones. But what's actually happening is the estrogen is binding up your thyroid hormone, and now your metabolism has slowed down. And so let's think about this in a different way. Picture a parking lot where you're suddenly half the spaces are reserved for VIPs. The regular cars are your thyroid hormones, and they can't find a spot. They're just circling, unable to park, unable to do their job. That's what TBG does. And it reserves spots, and your active thyroid hormone is left out in the cold. Conventional medicine doesn't anticipate this. They start you on estrogen and wait for you to complain before they look. And when they do test, they only test TSH, which is the lagging indicator. TSH can look completely normal while your free T3 is tanking on hormones. In my practice, we run a full thyroid panel before starting hormone therapy: TSH, free T4, free T3, reverse T3, and thyroid antibodies. Then we recheck 6 weeks after starting estrogen. If the T3 has dropped, we add T3 support. We don't wait for you to suffer. Dr. Uzi Rice was one of the true pioneers in bioidentical hormone therapy, has been saying this for decades. You cannot optimize hormones without optimizing thyroid. They are inseparable systems. Now, let's go on and let's talk about histamine. This is the one that trips up so many women, and almost nobody is talking about it. Estrogen is a histamine liberator. It directly triggers mast cells to release histamine. And if you're already dealing with histamine intolerances, which is common in perimenopause because of progesterone, which stabilizes the mast cells, is declining, and it declines before any other hormone declines, adding estrogen can push you completely over the edge. And this is one of the reasons it's so important to make sure that when you're adding estrogen, you're always adding progesterone along with it, regardless of whether or not you have a uterus. Doctors are going to tell you if you don't have a uterus, you don't need progesterone, you only need estrogen. But there are so many other functions for progesterone within the body that if we don't support that, we're going to cause estrogen dominance, and we're going to cause side effects that you are not going to be happy with. So if you start on hormones, and especially estrogen, and you start getting hives or flushing or heart palpitations, anxiety, and insomnia, we need to think about histamine, because histamine directly affects neurotransmitters. You can get severe mood swings and panic attacks. Does this sound familiar to anybody? This is exactly what happened to my patient. So think of histamine like a bucket. Every day you're adding histamine from foods, from environmental triggers, from hormonal fluctuations. Your DAO enzyme, diamine oxidase, is the drain at the bottom. It clears histamine out. But if the bucket is already full and you add estrogen, which dumps more histamine in, that bucket overflows. And that's when the symptoms hit. So in my practice, we assess histamine intolerances before prescribing estrogen. We look at your symptom history. Do you react to aged cheeses, wine, fermented foods? Do you have seasonal allergies? Do you have hives, anxiety that worsens around your cycle? If that picture points to histamine intolerances, we stabilize that first. Low histamine diet, DAO enzyme supplementation, quercetin, vitamin C. We want to optimize progesterone because it's a natural mast cell stabilizer. And then, only then, do we introduce estrogen, low and slow. We're going to take a break. We're going to hear from one of our sponsors. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the root cause of fixing things before we start.
Tired of being told your labs are normal, but you still feel terrible? At Serenity Healthcare Center, we don't chase symptoms. We find the root cause. Hormones, gut health, autoimmune conditions, chronic fatigue, brain fog. We use cutting-edge functional and regenerative medicine to get you real answers and a real path forward. This isn't your average doctor's office. This is medicine the way it was meant to be practiced. You deserve to feel like yourself again. Visit serenityhealthcarecenter.com to book your appointment today.
All right, welcome back. Let me bring this all together for you because I know some of you are either about to start hormone therapy or you're already on it and wondering why it isn't working. And here is the checklist I walk every patient through before we touch hormones. Number 1, test your estradiol level. Let's look at your estrogen metabolism. Find out if you're producing the protective or problematic estrogen metabolites. If your ratios are off, we shift them with DIM, calcium D-glucarate, and cruciferous vegetables. Now, I want to remind you here, you cannot eat enough cruciferous vegetables to do this in your daily life. You will be miserable, and so will everybody around you if you try to. So we give a cruciferous compound in a capsule form, and that gives you a large enough amount of cruciferous vegetables without the consequences of eating so many of them. So you get all the upside and none of the downside. If phase 2 is sluggish, we support it with glutathione precursors and methylation nutrients, NAC, ALA, glutathione itself. Any of these kind of compounds are things that will work. Number 2, we're going to optimize your gut. We may or may not run a GI map or a comprehensive stool test, but we're going to look specifically at beta-glucuronidase activity, inflammatory markers, any signs of leaky gut. And if your microbiome is dysbiotic, we fix it first. Target probiotics, prebiotic fibers if necessary, antimicrobials if there's an overgrowth. And Dr. David Perlmutter's work on the gut-brain hormone axis make it clear that gut is the foundation. And if you skip this step and you're building on sand, you're going to have a poor outcome on your hormone replacement therapy. Number 3, we always run a full thyroid panel. TSH alone is not enough. We want a free T4, a free T3, a reverse T3, a TPO, and TG antibodies. If your free T3 is low or your reverse T3 is high, we address that before you add estrogen to the picture. And then we recheck 6 weeks after starting hormones without an exception. Step number 4, you have to assess histamine intolerance. If you have a history of seasonal allergies, food sensitivities, hives, anxiety, and shifts around your cycle or reactions to fermented foods and wine, put that history on the table. Stabilize the histamine with a low histamine protocol, DAO enzymes to support before we add estrogen. And we may need to add LDA, which is low dose antigen, or LDI, low dose immunotherapy, to this mixture as well while we're doing hormone therapy. Number 5 is support your liver. Even if your liver enzymes are completely normal, we assume your detox pathways need support in perimenopause. Milk thistle, unless you have a histamine reaction or a ragweed allergy. NAC, glycine, methylated B vitamins, alpha lipoic acid, reduce your alcohol and processed foods. Your liver is running 1,000 processes simultaneously. Give it what it needs to handle the extra hormone load. And here's what I want to be really clear about. You don't have to have all of this perfectly dialed in before you start hormones, but you do need to know where your weak points are. And so you can monitor and adjust as you go. Hormone therapy is not a one-time prescription. It is a living protocol. Testing, retesting, fine-tuning. That's how you get the outcome that patients in my office eventually get. But if you think this is a one and done, then hormone therapy may not be for you because it is not something you can test once, start taking hormones, and then forget about it and never test it again, or see your doctor once a year and never have a conversation with them again. That is not the ideal way to do hormone therapy. You may get to that point after a few years of doing this and dialing it in, but in the beginning, you're going to want to test and retest, test and retest. And this is why we've created our hormone membership at Serenity Healthcare Center, specifically to help people who are trying to get on hormones to do this in an affordable fashion with the testing and the expertise of seeing the practitioner on a regular basis so that you could keep dialing these things in. So check out our hormone membership at serenityhealthcarecenter.com. Now, let me take you back to where we started. That patient who came to me in tears, having panic attacks for the first time in her life after starting bioidentical hormones, we took her off estrogen temporarily. We supported her liver detoxification and NAC and DIM. We addressed her gut with targeted probiotics, a low histamine protocol. We added T3 support for her sluggish thyroid. 3 months later, we reintroduced estrogen at a lower dose, and this time her body was ready. No panic attacks, no weight gain, just real relief from the hot flashes, the brain fog that had been running her life. That is the difference between throwing hormones at symptoms and preparing the body to receive them. Hormone therapy can genuinely be life-changing in perimenopause and menopause. I have seen it transform women's lives, but it only works when your body can metabolize, detoxify, and actually use what you're giving it. If you skip that foundational work, you're not just wasting money, you're creating new problems. If you're in Wisconsin and you want to work with a team that's going to test your estrogen metabolism, your gut, your liver, confirm the thyroid is stable, and manage your histamine before we ever write a prescription. Or if you're already on hormones and you're feeling worse, reach out to us directly. You can text the clinic at 262-522-8640, or you can book online at serenityhealthcarecenter.com. If you're outside of Wisconsin, our telehealth platform, LEMD, works in all 50 states with the same functional medicine philosophy. The link is in the show notes. And for compounded prescriptions, Wisconsin patients, we partner with MD Custom RX. Their link is also in the show notes. I have been working with them for over 20 years. Absolutely love this compounding pharmacy. And if you're looking for supplements and labs from today's episode, you can find them in our full script dispensary. The link is in the description. Yes, you can order your own labs. You do not have to have a practitioner do that. And there are some great labs that you can get from our full script dispensary, as well as all of the supplements that we listed today and talked about in today's episode. So thank you so much for being here today on Let's Talk Wellness Now. If this episode helped you understand what might actually be going on with your hormones, please share it with somebody. It really helps us be able to bring you better episodes as well. And these episodes truly can help people who have not been introduced to functional medicine. Text it to a friend who's been struggling with HRT, post it, share it on your social page. Someone in your life needs to hear this. Remember, wellness isn't about feeling okay. It's about thriving, and you deserve to actually thrive. If you're ready to explore how root cause hormone medicine can get you there, visit serenityhealthcarecenter.com or connect with me directly on social media. Until next time, I'm Dr. Deb. Take care of your body, your mind, and your spirit. Be well, and I'll see you on the next episode.